G'day everybody, welcome to It's Zoo Time. My name's Alan Andres. I'm the founder of ZooCoins and ZooCaz, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here with everybody, all of our 5,600 plus ZooCoinists on this big day today, which is the 6th of March 2023. A lot to talk about. Now, we have done today, the team, an extensive email, which is going out as an update. I've called this update a little bit earlier in light of a few developments over the weekend and early last week. So very important that when you get the update, it's long. It does go for a few pages, and I'd like everybody to take the time and effort to read it because all your questions are answered in that email. So just try and keep the load of queries to support to a minimal as we push ahead. Now, before I get into it, we've had a lot of communications that we've been going on in relation to the coin distributions, and that's been fantastic during the break. So the last update was about the 30th of December, and since then, we're very certainly volume of coins have gone out. And now we're just down to the last bits and pieces of those that need their coins to be picked up in relation to that. So follow those emails. Don't be scared again. The wallets have been working absolutely perfect. We have had absolutely zero issues on the main protocol. That's the split chain layer 1 network. It's been working without any glitches, been awesome. Large volumes of transactions. People are doing peer-to-peer transactions amongst themselves. So that opportunity has been available. There's been a lot of coins change hands, so to speak. And that's just been happening, literally day to day amongst each of the peers for what we've delivered accordingly in terms of the split chain and in terms of the coins sitting in wallets. Backups have been great. People have just been referring to the website. Look at the website again. You can't over backup, so make sure you've got it backed up. Be careful of USBs because they can be corrupted, even if they're old USBs as well. So hard drive, USBs, and for those that know what they're doing, they certainly can print out the code, which you can keep on hard file in terms of on a piece of paper. So why did I need to get everybody together? Well, it's been a big few days actually. And the big question is, which everybody wants, is that how are we travelling and how are we tracking as per the roadmap that we looked at for the 31st of March of this year? Well, in one sense, we've been tracking incredibly fantastic. And in another sense, the eyes will roll and we'll say, well, we've got this delay. We're not having exchanges integrated by 31 March. That will not happen. So just put that out there so that's clear for everybody, and that's contained in the email. Now, last week, the progress reports, and we have these regular meetings all through Christmas and all the New Year's and all the way through in terms of the ZooBot. Now, just as a recap, the ZooBot is the little bridge or the connector, if you like, that's built, and that underpins the whole process to automate the volumes of transactions that you'd be needing and necessary for the exchanges. Not only that, it also is requirement for, as I've said on numerous occasions when we had our conventions, that's required for the mass distribution. So we've been handling and testing that, and thank you to all of those, by the way, that did the alligator blood augmented reality. Yes, it did serve a purpose in getting votes for the horse, but most importantly, it was a way in which we could test the augmented reality for people to use and the sequencing in that regard. And the feedback was fantastic, which we've now got the augmented reality team with some fine tuning because that was up to 5,600 users. Whereas as we unleash and get close to the ZooBot, then of course we're going to need that in the tens of millions. So I'll give an update on the marketing, which has come to a close actually. We've got enough database now to support the demand that we're talking about. Now, last week in the meetings, there was quite a big week in the crypto space. And I've alluded to this in the EDM, which is going out. As I said, please read it. Don't just gloss over it and say that's there and then ask the questions into support, which are all contained in the EDM because of the timeline. The roadmap's been upgraded this afternoon, so you'll see that. And that closes off 30 June for good reason in terms of where we see the Zubot and how we see the exchanges and also the mass marketing. So there has been a decision made as a result of that. Now, last week, we had the SEC chairman in the United States, Gary Gensler, clearly indicate the position of what's happening in America in relation to the crypto space. Now, he made the call that as far as the SEC is concerned, and bear in mind, I'm raising this now because this has impacted upon what we made a decision yesterday. So yesterday, so you're aware, we had an urgent workshop with Robert, myself, and Head of Support, Peter Allen, on Sunday for the day. And I've made a particular call as a result of that as to where we go between our short-term desires and our long-term goals, where I see it. So when I talk about, or you see Gary Gensler, it's important to understand that the SEC, which encapsulates a potential 350 million plus market, that is of the crypto space, he's come out of the blocks and said that as far as they're concerned, if there's middlemen involved in the processes, that's to do with the crypto, then as far as they're concerned, everything else except for Bitcoin is a security. Now, most of you don't care about that. All you're worried about is saying, well, let's get on an exchange and let's take some early trading, and that's fine. I analysed the database yesterday, and of the 5,600 odd wallets, less than 1% of people fall into that category that we get calls in relation to the anxieties about wanting to be on the exchange sooner than later. So we've weighed that up. I get that. But in terms of the overall long-term goals and big picture, these are some of the considerations that I had to make a call on yesterday. Now, I flagged that because we always have only ever compared ourselves to Bitcoin for good reason. And the split chain layer 1 protocol, which you would have seen on the conventions, clearly is all about developers being able to build on it, the way in which that Robert has done that to give ease of access in the language of between the wallets of JavaScript and, of course, PHP. And by building on it, you create layer 2 type products, which in themselves may very well be securities, but not the core Zoocoin itself, which means it opens it up itself like Bitcoin to a bigger market, which comes back to the old supply and demand that I talk about, because the maths will take care of itself. You don't need to spruik about numbers and how far it's going to go up and what we're thinking. If on the left side you've got 10 buyers and you've got one seller, you can do the maths yourself in that regard, which is why it's important. So that was a big factor that played into our minds last week. And in conjunction with that, you may or may not have read that Solana, which is a competing network, is getting more and more centralized, and it's sort of self-imploded for 48 hours. And by that there was a glitch in the network. It became more and more centralized. That is, you've got this middleman concept, which is what Gary Gensler refers to. If there's some middleman or group, then that may drag it into this securities definitions. Now, for those reasons, Solana literally shut it down. There was no transactions processing. And that's because problems weren't solved in terms of the scalability, the way in which the nodes on the one hand can affect, in the case of the blockchain world, transactions for validation and processing, and the way in which you can scale that up. So Solana certainly was a big report that we were looking at as to how, if you want hundreds of millions of peers, but you also want hundreds of millions of UDAs in our world. I had referred to them as unique digital assets. We made a decision yesterday that we're going to call them universal digit assets moving forward. And that's for good reason, for what they can encapsulate now with what I'm about to share with you. As to the decision as to the extension of the development time. But if you look at that sort of the problems in Solana, that sort of then spilt itself into issues that raised last week about Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin, you've still got your time processing and fees and costs, and it hasn't solved anything as you all know, the nodes in the Bitcoin world are supercomputers. They do algorithms. They actually are, in fact, a middle type arrangement, even though that Gensler is saying it's computer driven rather than human driven, in relation to transacting and those transactions into the block. Now, as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger in the block, it slows things down. The news last week was that they released the first of the ordinals. Now, an ordinal is a glorified name for NFT. So it's the first time, as I understand, there was 100,000 produced of ordinals or NFTs within the Bitcoin block space, the blockchain. Now, you may not think that's of any great occurrence, but it is, because not only do you have the volume of Bitcoins themselves, that is the digital currency, pushing itself into the blockchain space, you now have another layer of NFTs that are coming into and being used in that regard in terms of using the Bitcoin blockchain, which puts a load pressure onto Bitcoin. So the timelines on processing are getting further out, depending on how much you pay, could be 3 or 4 hours or even more, which is completely against the entire split chain model that we've built about real-time transaction. In the case of our peers, the 90-second cycle, but in the case of the Zoobot, instantaneous in real-time transaction for the bulk processing that we talk about, which is required for merchants, required if they come on board, it's required for the mass distribution, it's required for the exchanges. All of those things sort of e-commerce come together if you want to bring in huge volumes onto that particular split chain protocol. Now, if you look at that, the other issue then it came up was, which was a glaringly obvious thing that's concerned me for some time, is that Binance itself had shut down the withdrawals of US dollar from the Binance accounts. Now, they say that's not a huge percentage. They were running euros and other currencies, but that's dependent upon the jurisdiction, of course. Now, the disclosed reason for that is not certain, but it means that even though with our Zoobot, we've got the solution in terms of you never leave your coins with an exchange, and I've been pretty on the money in terms of worrying about that position of losing coins. The next problem is that, we've got 6 exchanges. We're comfortable with them, but that doesn't stop, in relation to that, the issue of where's your money? If it's sitting on exchange, can you get paid or can you get it out? So the Binance is another red flag that's come up, that for whatever reasons, you may get all excited. We could have rushed through and said, okay, yes, let's lock down and load the exchanges. And then the next thing, that 1% that want to trade, which is not a big percentage of our database, the others are more long-term players for the bigger picture. I'm one of those. Many of the other bigger players are as well. We're not looking for short-term solutions either in terms of how the exchange works. Now, all of that came together when we got news last week that, and you'll see this in the EDM, that Robert had come across as a result of his hard work on the Zoobot, and Robert does hard work. He puts it through to prepare that for the bulk automation, if you like, that he said there was a light bulb moment where he realized that he's had a discovery in terms of how the network, that is the nodes, can solve a number of these problems in one hit, given a bit more time to put that in play, which means that once you do these things, as I said to you with the peers and the wallets, you release them, you can't reverse thrust and try and change things. You move forward with the entire protocol. So Sunday's meeting was about, what is this discovery? What has he done? What does it mean? And the significance of that in terms of why do we need to move or push out a bit more in terms of the development underlying the Zoobot? And the answer is quite simple. I'm in the boardroom at the moment. Not going to disclose to you the charts and the mapping that was completed as to what he was on about, but certainly there was a couple of key aspects, and one is, which we refer to, is this in order to solve the middleman concept. Now, bearing in mind, I don't want to get too technical here, but other than to say that our nodes don't validate anything, they just cache and store information so that the peers, when you do transactions, and we've had truckloads of transactions, I've got no idea who's doing what. People are buying solar energy and all sorts of things using the coins and getting out there and making their own market, if you like, not reliant on us to do something with the exchanges. But as a result of that, the nodes are just a bit like a warehouse. They're storing the data. Someone knocks on the door and says, "Is that a truth?" In other words, is the node storing something that can be validate or prove, rather, not by consensus, that what the node peers are doing is actually real and there's not a double spin, and it allows the transaction to occur. So that's the difference with us and what everyone else is doing in terms of blockchain. But the problem with that is that you can have some naughty nodes. Now, not many people outside of the IT world is aware of what's called a Sybil attack, SYBIL, a Sybil attack. Now, we had some processes in place prior to this, but the light bulb moment was the way Robert realised in the last week, as he's building this out, that he can come as close to perfection as you could possibly ask for in solving Sybil. And what is Sybil? Sybil is a multiple personality. It's a name that was assigned in the industry. It's not so much inherent in major centralized programs because they can control the servers and they can control the information as to you getting access to, like Google, for example. Google can, you're going to do your emails and you're going to have data that flows between you and Google. Once you get decentralized, other parties can come in and try and be the naughty nodes to stop you getting access to some of that information, which then can confirm the transaction, if you like. Now, the highest level solution, which is not perfect, is actually Bitcoin through blockchain, because what they do is they incentivize the nodes, that they're driven by huge costs to maintain their servers, huge costs and energy in terms of the computers that they're running, and they're incentivized by getting rewards through mining coins and fees, which means they're not inclined to sort of block transactions. Now, that's where you get concentration of nodes, and that's where you don't get the capacity to be truly decentralized when you look at the hash rates, if that's the case. So if you want 1 million nodes, then the problem is you might have, one good node and all the others are bad, which means that you can't get your transactions through or flowing. Now, Solana's a little bit different, but certainly it shows you that concentration of centralization can cause the whole networks to go down. So the last thing we want is, if we're building up these profiles of UDAs, we're building up even the virtual real estate we've talked about, we build up all these other add-on layer twos, you want the network to continue without any problems in efficient times. Now, if you think of Ethereum, their solution is, you swing it out to stakeholders, and stakeholders are stumping up some big money, and they say, look, we'll put our coins there and we'll become a good node and we'll do things. But that doesn't stop the malicious attacks that can occur if somebody wants to do damage to either the transaction flow or the process, or do damage to your value of the digital asset you're holding as a result of the Sybil attack. Now, I have put a link in there to give you a bit of a handle on Sybil. It can get a bit technical, but the generalization is you've got to work a way through how you can trigger finding the good node in split-second nano time so that the transactions of the peers can go through. Now, that was the light bulb moment. That was the workshop we did yesterday. And it is an ingenious solution that Robert has come up with, which we would say is the first time in any decentralized platform that you will be able to see the participation of any nodes, and how important that is that you can access as a peer those nodes to get confirmation as to the truth of your transaction, which allows the peers to do the validation themselves without overloading the system. So in other words, if we want to, which it will with the open source, allow developers with basic PHP, JavaScript knowledge to produce 1 million UDAs, which are verifiable by the identifiers using the fractions of the coins that we talk about, they're not going to overload the system or the nodes to slow down the transactions that need for, on the left-hand side, peer-to-peer transactions. or transactions with the exchanges, which could be, hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. There could be globalization in terms of transactions with merchants. And then you've got, as part of that, e-commerce, bricks and mortar, et cetera, where it's all open for everybody to participate. Now, I'm not expecting the smaller players with ZooCoins to run their own nodes, but the cost exercise here is negligible. That I, for example, or other participants with large coins, maybe it's a custodial bank, maybe it's one of our merchants that want to create UDAs, won't disclose who that is, but certainly they want to build on the platform to release lots of these UDAs. They will run the nodes, and those nodes, through what Robert's building out, are certainly in a position that you'll know that they're good nodes in your indexing with the wallet that you have as a peer. Now, all this happens behind the scenes. It just means that we won't have the scalability problems. We won't have the attacks malicious attacks that come into play. And there's no one reliance either on any end of the system, either through the peers or through the nodes. Now, if that's not built now, then it will never get built. And then you have an inherent problem down the road and that could be the difference between 300 or 400 million participants versus the system that slows down in terms of what we see today, which what Gary Gensler is saying, of 12,500 coins, which I alluded to before, they're nearly going to be vaporized, worthless, because they're not coping with the way in which the networks are working. They're not coping with the way in which they're defined legally, because all of a sudden they need middlemen or middle groups to control these problems. The moment you throw a middle person into it, you've got a problem. There is no middle Alan Endres or ZooCoins in what happens with the coins and the processors. If you want to go out today, way you go, this allows this system for node scalability and transactional scalability on a massive scale. So the choice was pretty basic in the end on Sunday. Yes, run around, lock in what we've got, work our way towards exchange listings, which may or may not be a good thing in terms of the 6 exchanges. I mean, we think we've got the best of the best, but nothing's for certain. If someone out there wants to sell $20 or $30 million worth of ZooCoins, the risk you run is getting paid from the exchange. Now, I won't disclose which exchange it was, but there was one exchange at the convention where I asked the founder, in his instance, yes, they were happy that they don't need access to our coins. That's the way the process works, which is a world first that we put out there, for protection of everybody. There's 2-factor authentication, which works fantastic. I did ask the question, if I had $200 million of my ZooCoins through my trust, where does that money reside? And the answer was, well, it's with a trust account that's with his company, and that's in the hands of 3 of his trusted staff. Now, there's the first red flag. So we've been looking for solutions on that and the scalability issues, and this solving the civil problem is an amazing, extraordinary outcome, which hasn't been done before, which I've alluded to that, in the update that I put out. So I've opted for putting aside basically 1% of our database's needs between now and the end of March to the 99% of our needs for those inherent players that see the bigger opportunities and what we can achieve between now and the work program that we're working through with this incredible project that came up literally last week, workshopped yesterday and approved by me late yesterday afternoon as a result of that, which is why I've done this update. Otherwise, I wouldn't have bothered with the update. We were just heading towards our program as planned on the roadmap. So the roadmap on the website's been updated. The email is in depth. It talks about the issues I've just raised and certainly gives you an insight as to my goal in terms of creating value propositions on the protocol as well as the ZooCoin itself, and therefore the mass distribution. So the alligator blood certainly assisted the team here with the augmented reality. We've learned a lot out of that. There were some time delays on some of that. The feedback was incredible, which they can now work on that program as well to improve that. The marketing team, headed up by Liam Scammell, Georgie and Phil, they've completed their database, and that database of potential distribution of wallets, and both a full coin and a fraction of a coin, is in the order of 100 million plus. Now, I'm expecting, based on our strategies that we did with testing last year, that we should get a 30% take-up rate. And of that, we should be looking at, on the indications that we're already getting by recent sales, which I've increased that in terms of not the price, but the amount you have to buy, because it's no good us processing coins. We wanted to slow that down until the Zoobot was finished, which could automate that, and we would be part of the exchange as well. So that 30% take up is realistic. And then, of course, when the viral referral link to a wallet is gone from grey to blue, then we find that most people with their wallets want to send it out to at least 9 to 10 additional people. And that has a very big viral impact, because they're quite happy to send a fraction, and they're quite happy for people to come in, which means you can do the maths yourself. As I said earlier, you're either in a position to trade on the exchange, or we hope to have a prototype of our marketplace. We're building a decentralized marketplace as well during this period, mainly for selfish reasons for myself. I'm just concerned about the exchanges with where that money resides, and getting that money out. So I'll talk about that quickly now as to what we've put in play. We had a meeting with that in Sydney as a result of the convention. And the idea is that there is facilities where, if approved and giving absolute certainty on a transaction, you can actually transact peer-to-peer from card to card. So in other words, we're looking at a dumbed-down version of an eBay versus a Gumtree, and you can simply put your buys and sells on an open marketplace. It's decentralized, and it allows you to literally put your credit card or debit card details in, put your wallet address in, put your buy or sell on, and when that's triggered, the card company will do what's called a pre-authorization. They will lock in the money that is needed to be used to buy the coins from the seller. And that nanosecond, the Zoobot, which has now got this unique world first in terms of solving the Sybil issue platform, means that the nodes are instantaneous and allows the nodes to work through mapping amongst each other and make sure that we've got the truth of those nodes. And that transfers then the money directly to the seller's credit or debit card, MasterCard or Visa, and the two cross over. The coins go to the wallet, the cash goes to the card. There is no middle retention of money in that instant. Now, that's an amazing concept. That's a good 3 months of build out on that. We're not counting on that for you guys in the short term, but the short term players will get their exchanges to do what you do want to do best. If you want that 1% to get out, that's fine. For the longer term players, this gives you an opportunity that on a global scale, you could have hundreds of millions of people in this marketplace with the ability to put up their Zoo coins, and also importantly, the UDAs, which is why you need the network support for scalability and efficiency. If you haven't got that, there's no good talking about 1 billion UDAs that could be in play. So the merchants and clients we're dealing with want to build UDAs. They want to make value in them. Now, those UDAs, if they've got other potential in the UDA itself, then of course they'll need to comply with global securities laws and ASIC and so forth if they're going down that road. But there's no issue with that. They become AFSL licensed. They comply with the laws. They produce these products and they give you the benefits. So that platform, we're calling it SplitX. SplitX will have a prototype over the next month or so. We're probably going to share it with you guys just to test the user face or the interface. We're dumbing it down so that it's not complicated what you see with current exchanges, but that's an alternative in addition to the current contracts we've spent a lot of money on with the existing 6 exchanges. All right, so working towards the roadmap, this unique discovery in terms of the Sybil and the nodes, which is a massive development project that no one has achieved, is huge. for the long-term value proposition of the whole network moving forward is what I've chosen. And that's how that is going to pan out now with what we're doing. I don't think I've got much more. I just wanted to raise with you that it was sort of a perfect storm last week in some of these things that were giving me the jitters in terms of the networks around the world, the way in which the governments and regulators were behaving towards crypto. Bitcoin is still holding strong. I think it's still around 22,000 USD, which is fantastic given all the problems that it's facing. But it did get that tick of the box from Gary Gensler at the SEC that it's not a security, it's a commodity. That's the space that we see Zoocoins as being the only positioned crypto that can deliver on that mandate, given the way in which the platform has been structured. And this additional solution is enormous for our long-term project. That's all from me, everybody. Certainly, hopefully we can keep the queries to a minimum. The support desks has been very busy over the break. Peter and his team haven't had a break. The main program has been pushing out, getting people comfortable getting their coins. If you still haven't got your coins, can you please follow through the emails, sign off the acknowledgements, give your wallet address to Peter. It's a very simple exercise. The coins will be transferred. There's not a lot to go, down to bare minimum now, and accept responsibility that you've got the coins. You can please yourself with what you do at this stage, and we're working towards the big picture, which will deliver the outcomes that I've wanted. I'll just leave you with this thought. People say, oh yeah, another delay, etc. But that's how it is when we're looking at the big projects. It's not a great deal in terms of development time of that component, because that has a bigger implication in terms of what I'm on about, mass distribution and mass usage. And as a result of that, it's a bit like I've shown people recently the patience that I've got with either my litigation or the patience and the outcomes that have come to fruition. And just think of alligator blood, for example. There was a horse with serious spinal injuries, written off, would never race again, had 2 years in rehabilitation. And the good news is he's won 4 Group 1s, and they're the Group 1s we're going to win for Zoocoins. And we're going to win that for the split chain network, and the excitement that we got of the feedback from the conventions of developers. There's your key. Developers means more usage, more product, more use of the coin, and the numbers can go anywhere. So no need to me to tell you about how high or low they are. It depends on each person's individual circumstances. You know, if you need to get out, you can trade amongst yourselves now. If you're in there in that 99% of our database, then the big picture is there, and that's what we're going to deliver. So thank you, everybody. Been a pleasure. I don't expect much more updates in the next interim short term unless something crops up, but this was important. It was a very, very busy day yesterday to make those calls, and I've done it. I'm glad I've done it. And read my email update, because that'll give you some clarification of how significant this is in terms of the long-term scalability and efficiencies of where I see the network. Cheers, everybody. Look forward to the next catch-up.